Have you ever driven all the way home from work, and then, sitting in your driveway, you realize you don't remember a single second of the trip? Or maybe you found yourself standing in the kitchen, grabbing a snack, not because you're hungry, but, well, just because. It's a wild feeling, right? Like, for huge chunks of our day, we are living completely on autopilot.
You know, this idea that we're all just sleepwalking through our routines, it isn't new. Way back in 1892, the brilliant psychologist William James put it perfectly. He said our lives are shaped less by these huge, conscious decisions we make, and more by the tiny, repeated actions we don't even think about.
And you know what? Modern science totally backs him up. A study from Duke University discovered that over 40%, think about that, nearly half, of the things we do every single day aren't really decisions at all, they're habits. So if we're on autopilot for almost half of our lives, it raises a couple of pretty big questions. What exactly are these things? And the most important question of all, can we actually control them?
To really answer that, we're going to start with the incredible, true story of a woman named Lisa Allen. Her life completely turned around the moment she finally understood the power that was hiding inside her own daily routines.
So at 34, Lisa was, to put it mildly, at the end of her rope. She was struggling with her weight, she was drowning in debt, and she was still reeling from a really painful divorce. On a whim, she took a trip to Cairo, just trying to escape it all. And that's where she hit rock bottom. In a dark hotel room, completely jet-lagged, she reached for a cigarette, but tried to light a pen. And in that one absurd moment, she just felt this wave of sadness wash over her. She knew right then and there something had to change.
Looking out at the vast Egyptian desert, she made a promise to herself. She would come back and trek across it. Now to do that, she knew she'd have to quit smoking. And this, right here, is where the magic started, because that one single decision set off a chain reaction. See, to replace the smoking habit, she started jogging. And that one simple change started a ripple effect. It changed how she ate, how she slept, her work schedule, even how she managed her money. A few years later, this was a completely different person. She'd run a marathon, she was getting her master's degree, and she'd bought her own home. And it all started by changing just one pattern.
This thing that Lisa stumbled upon? Well, scientists actually have a name for it. It's called a keystone habit. Think of it like the central stone in an arch. It's the one habit that, when you change it, it starts this positive cascade, knocking over and remaking all sorts of other habits in your life. It's the key that unlocks everything else.
So Lisa's story is amazing, right? It shows us what's possible. But the really big question is, how does it actually work? To get the mechanics of a habit, we need to peek inside the human brain, and we can do that thanks to a remarkable man named Eugene Pauly.
So a viral infection completely destroyed the part of Eugene's brain that makes new memories. He was basically frozen in time. He couldn't remember his doctor, he didn't know what day it was, he couldn't even recall eating breakfast just minutes earlier. And yet, every day he could take a walk around his neighborhood and find his way back home. He could navigate his own house to find the kitchen and get a snack. He was building brand new habits with zero conscious memory of ever learning them. How on earth is that possible?
Well, the answer is something scientists call the habit loop. It's a really simple three-part process that our brains use to turn pretty much any action into an automatic routine. And why does the brain do this? It's all about efficiency. Your brain is brilliantly lazy. It's always looking for ways to go on autopilot so it can save its energy for bigger, harder problems.
And every single habit you have, whether it's good or bad, follows this exact same loop. It starts with a cue. That's the trigger that tells your brain, hey, go into autopilot and run this program. Next up is the routine. This is the action itself. It can be physical, mental, anything. And finally, you get the reward. This is the little hit of pleasure that tells your brain, yeah, that was good. Let's remember this loop for next time. Cue, routine, reward. That's the whole game.
And this experiment with rats at MIT shows it perfectly. When they first put a rat in a maze, its brain is firing on all cylinders the whole time. It's working really hard. But check this out. After just 1 week, the pattern completely changes. You see these big spikes in brain activity at the cue, a little click sound, and at the reward, a piece of chocolate. But during the actual running of the maze, the routine, the brain is almost silent. It's outsourced the job. The habit has taken over.
Okay, so if our brains are so good at building these powerful automatic loops, how in the world do we change the ones that are holding us back? Well, that brings us to the most powerful tool in the entire playbook, the golden rule of habit change. And here it is.
This is the fundamental truth you have to understand. You cannot just delete a bad habit. You can't. That pathway is burned into your brain. So you have to work with the loop, not fight against it.
So here's how it's done. You keep the old cue, the trigger, exactly the same, and you make sure you get the same reward that the old habit was giving you. But, and this is the key, you consciously swap in a new routine. Take Mandy, a woman who wanted to stop biting her nails. Her cue was a feeling of stress in her fingertips. The reward she craved was some kind of physical stimulation. So she kept both of those, but she changed the routine. Instead of biting her nails, she'd just rub her arm. Simple, right? She'd just replace the metal part.
This gives all of us a clear 4-step playbook. First, just identify the routine. What's the thing you actually want to change? Second, you got to experiment with rewards. Figure out what you're really craving. Is it food or is it just a break from boredom? Third, isolate the cue. What's triggering it? Is it a time of day, a place, a feeling? And finally, once you know all that, you make a plan. You design a new routine that gives you the reward you were really after all along.
All right, let's zoom out. Because these same principles that can change one person's life, they can also transform an entire organization. This is where we see the massive power of Keystone habits.
So back in 1987, a guy named Paul O'Neill takes over as CEO of the aluminum company Alcoa. At his very first big meeting with Wall Street investors, the money guys, they're expecting to hear about profits and forecasts. Instead, O'Neill gets up and says this. The room went silent. People were stunned. One investor literally ran out to call his clients and told them, sell your stock now, this guy is a crazy hippie and he's going to bankrupt the company.
But Paul O'Neill wasn't crazy. He was a genius. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was targeting a keystone habit. By making worker safety the one, single, absolute priority, he forced the entire company to change its habits around communication and operations. And the result? It was incredible. The injury rate dropped by 95%. Alcoa became one of the safest companies in the world. But here's where it gets really mind-blowing. That focus on safety was never just about safety. To make the factories safer, managers and workers had to talk to each other better. They had to redesign manufacturing processes, they had to innovate. That single keystone habit of safety created a culture of excellence that spread everywhere. And the financial payoff? By the time O'Neill retired, Alcoa's profits were 5 times higher than when he started.
And this power, it just keeps scaling up. It doesn't just change people or companies. When you understand how habits work, you can see how they fuel entire social movements that literally change the course of history.
Think about the Montgomery bus boycott. It didn't just happen randomly. It followed the rules of social habits. First, it started through strong ties. Rosa Parks was so well respected that her friends and her immediate circle mobilized instantly. Then, it grew through weak ties. That's the social pressure you feel when your neighbors and your colleagues all join in. But the reason it lasted, the reason it didn't just fizzle out, is that leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. gave people new habits, like nonviolent resistance, that created a powerful new identity.
But there is one final, crucial ingredient to this whole thing, especially when life gets hard. Whether you're one person trying to change or an entire movement facing down incredible pressure, scientists have found that the one thing that makes a new habit stick is belief. The belief that change is actually possible. And that belief is strongest when it's shared with a community.
So what this all really means is that our habits are not our destiny. They're just a code. And it's a code that can be understood and it can be rewritten. They are choices that at some point we stopped making, but that we can choose to start making again. By finding and changing just one keystone habit, you can set off a chain reaction that remakes everything. Which really just leaves one final question. What will yours be?